Well, here's a story about nuns I thought I'd never know. Welcome to the Film Trap Podcast. I am Chris Gore. Hope you're having a good day today. I love to talk about documentary film. And I think in particular, a type of documentary film that I really enjoy are historical documentaries that really cover an era of our American history that we may not have known so much about, that was unfolding in real time back in the day. This is a story that blew my mind. This documentary it's coming to Hulu, if I understand correctly. The director, Pedro Kos, is here today. We're going to talk about Rebel Hearts. Pedro, thanks for joining me on the Film Threat Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Sorry, having some issues.
Tell me, how did you, obviously you commit to doing a documentary. What was the story about these nuns from the 60s that kind of changed the landscape of the lifestyle of nuns? What kept coming up as I watched the film was that there are really no rules saying that these are rules. These rules are just made up by these cardinals, right? And it just was like, they're just making these rules up, and there's nothing that says they have to abide by these exact things. I mean, it was tradition, but what led you to committing to directing this documentary, which a historical documentary, especially this expansive, is a real commitment?
It really is. And first of all, thank you so much for having me on, Chris. Really appreciate it. One quick correction. Actually, the film will be launched on Sunday, June 27th on Discovery Plus. And what actually brought me to the film was I fell in love with the story when a dear friend and collaborator, Kira Carstensen, who is an amazing producer here in LA, connected me with the project's originator and creator, our extraordinary writer-producer, Shawnee Isaac-Smith, who began documenting these extraordinary women who were formerly the Sisters of the Immaculate Heart, and what they did, and it got really the most amazing firsthand accounts. I mean, she's been documenting these women since the early 2000s, late 90s, and one of the things was just, I was just so moved by their imagination and their integrity and their ability to kind of look beyond and see ahead, despite all that was holding them back, and really kind of standing firm. You know, they really stood up and sacrificed for everything for what they believed in. And that really, as someone who grew up Catholic in Brazil, but always had, took the institution of the church always with a grain of salt, it was really kind of a breath of fresh air, if I might say, that they were, they kind of saw beyond the institution and what the faith was about and what was calling them to do, and to be of service and to be the best influence on their communities, to empower their women students to be leaders, to be critical thinkers. They were great educators, and to be a part of the world. You know, the Immaculate Heart College was a hub of cultural activity in Los Angeles. It was the place to be. You know, like Jane Fonda, Tom Hayden, Buckminster Fuller, the Eames, that was a hub that people congregated that. And I think it was, I guess their fluidity and the way they acted in the world was, I guess, seen with fear and as a threat from the local patriarchy. And that also rose up all the way to the Vatican, unfortunately.
Would you say that their work actually attracted, new people into the church? They were, as weird as it sounds, they were kind of hip, especially the artwork that was done was really remarkable. Would you say that that was a result of their efforts? Was that not looked at?
Well, it's really interesting. I'm glad you mentioned the artwork by the amazing sister, Sister Corita Kent, who later then became just Corita Kent, who's one of the great pop artists of all time. Is one of the greatest American artists of the 20th century, I believe, and who really is overdue for her due. And one of the things, she became the one of the icons of pop art, really empowered by this extraordinary community of sisters who, wanted each sister to be, to live up to their greatest potential, right? They, they were educated their sisters in order to be the best teachers. They sent their sisters to get PhDs and masters in the leading universities in the country. I mean, Anita Caspary, who was the mother general of that order, was a PhD in literature from Stanford University, and that goes all across the board. So I think they were hip, and I think they did their spirit of inclusion, right? Their spirit of, come as you are and here, be part of this community, I think attracted a lot of people and sort of opened the doors to people that maybe weren't so sure or were questioning. But also, one of the things to really say about them, they were allies in the great movements of the time. I mean, Sister Patrice Underwood at the time marched in Selma with Martin Luther King. Ruth Ann Murray, Lenore Dowling, many others, were part of the farm workers' labor movement here in Southern California. They were really sort of part of the world. That's what they wanted to. They wanted to be a force of good in the world and be part of the the moment, and how we can contribute to the moment. And again, that was, I guess, seen with fear by the local archbishop.
How do you even begin to approach a documentary like this? Because it covers so much history, and archival documentaries, I think in particular, are very challenging. It's not like you're going to go out and you've got access to so much footage. Where do you begin, and how do you begin to sort of juggle that media and sort of map out a story?
Yeah, no, that is a great question, and it is really daunting, and it feels very overwhelming at first because it's so much material. I mean, I think from the count of it, once we did all the our finishing paperwork, it looked like we had about 4,200 elements in the film. And in order to do that, in order to bring that to life, we need a really extraordinary team. So, from Kira and Shawnee, who's the originator, who assembled a lot of these archival materials and these original interviews with these women, and then the amazing Judy Corrin, our other producer, who I had the great fortune to work with on The Great Hack before. We, led by Judy, we really kind of assembled an extraordinary team of editors, archival researchers, and motion graphics artists, animators. I mean, and it takes a while, and it really kind of takes a village to bring something like this to life. And it took many years. I mean, I started working on this project in 2016. That was little. It was only like a handful of us. Just like Shawnee, Kira, Judy, and myself in the beginning, and then brought on Gabriella to do more archival research. I mean, we have so much archivals, from the letters, photographs. And we wanted, one of the things that was important is to really kind of put you there in the shoes, of these extraordinary sisters. And in order to do that, I wanted to do something more as I say, I like the film to feel tactile, like you're in the archives. It takes you back in that tunnel, that time warp, that tunnel of time, and takes you back to the 60s. And in order to bring that to life, we really had an extraordinary team of motion graphics artists who really kind of thought outside the box and how to bring this in a lively way that also pays, homage to the sisters and to Sister Carita herself as well, especially with the animation, which this amazing animator from Iceland, based in Montreal, Una Lorentzen, did. We're really kind of inspired by Sister Carita. We would ask ourselves in the edit room, what would Sister Carita do? And that's one of the things, kind of thinking outside the box and kind of bringing to life stretches of the story that weren't, we didn't have much materials to use. We thought of like, well, why not think like the sisters did, think outside the box and kind of bring it to life in a different way. And that felt really organic to the story.
I'm glad you mentioned putting yourself in the era, because I really feel like you captured that. There's so much from the music to archival footage to the animation, which I thought was stylistically kind of like sort of representative of that limited animation that was popular in the 60s. Like, I feel like you captured the era. I love a doc like that kind of puts you in that time period, which is awesome. So this was a 5-year journey for you. Well, how does it feel at the end now? And what do you think what do you want to leave with the legacy of what they accomplished?
That's a great question. And it was a 5-year journey for me, and just think it was a 20-year journey for Shawnee. So that's even more mind-boggling. But one of the things I think that, even though for me, from working on this since 2016 to today, so 5 years, it's how current the story is, right? How, even though it is set in the 60s, I think it really speaks to the nature of where we are now. And it's really, for me, a meditation on change. Because and how change comes about, larger change as a community, as a society, and individual as well. And how painful it is, right? These women had to sacrifice a lot for what they believed in, but they stuck together. And there was a lot of ups and downs, as you can see in the film. It was a roller coaster ride in many ways. But at the same time, their commitment to their values and what they believed in, and the awakening that they had, I think really speaks to where we are right now in this push for greater equality and greater justice overall, and sort of the sacrifices that we have to make. I mean, I keep thinking of the sentence that Coretta Scott King told Patrice Underwood and Selma, the cause of justice is greater than, Martin and her family being, their safety. And, they made a lot of, it's the sacrifices that a lot of us are asked to make for what we believe in.
And it's just amazing to see that, like, I mean, there are so many activist movements that we're aware of. I was not aware before I watched the film, so it was very enlightening to me. Pedro Kos, thank you for being on the Film Threat podcast. I want to mention Rebel Hearts is on Discovery Plus, which, if you're smart, you get Discovery Plus and Hulu and Disney Plus all in a package. It's all together in a big thing. You can do that. So Discovery Plus, Rebel Hearts. Pedro, thank you for being on the Film Threat podcast. I really appreciate it.
Chris, thank you so much. It's been an honor to be here.